Hello, hello. Welcome, everyone. Super excited to have you here for the Beyond Sales Crafting Exceptional Customer Experiences session. Super excited to be here today, and even more excited to be here with such an amazing panelist, which we'll introduce you to soon. Really what we're here to chat about today is how do we really think about the post-sale journey? What are strategies to really enhance the customer experience, drive brand loyalty, and really foster that organic growth and adoption that many of us are really looking for. So we're really happy to be here. And hopefully you guys get a lot of value out of the discussion that we're going to be having. To introduce myself, I'm Vanessa Gatihi. For the last 5 years, I was at Slack. Most recently, I was head of CS for one of our high touch segments within the customer success team. And most recently, I just moved to OpenAI as the first CS person there. So lots of hats. But really excited to be here with my other guests, and I'll let them introduce themselves. Alex, would you like to introduce yourself first?
Sure. Hi, thank you for having me. I am the Senior Director of Customer Success at Vidyard. I've been here for about 2.5 years. And the journey in CS started for me roughly 11 years ago. Tons of roles as a manager, individual contributor, and I oversee the entire CS org here at Vidyard.
And Adam.
Yeah, great. Great to be here with everybody. Really excited to meet with all of you. I'm Adam Maher, Senior Manager of Customer Success here at Orem. Previous to Orem, I was the Vice President of Customer Success at DealerSocket. I oversaw a team of 180 plus CSMs. After that, I went and was the CEO of Moki, and then went and ventured off into entrepreneurship and was a co-founder of Social Mining AI. And after some time there, I found Orem and was really thrilled about it and joined the team. And it's been really fun and exciting. And so I have a great passion for customer success and really enjoy delivering great customer experiences. So excited to be here and talk about it.
Yeah, I love that. I love that everyone seems to have different roles and backgrounds and experiences in this post-sale customer success landscape. So really excited to see all of the really great nuggets and strategies and stories you guys are going to be able to bring to this conversation. So excited to dive in here. So on that point here, I would love to kind of kick this off. And I think when we're talking about creating this really great post-sale experience beyond, the interaction that they had with sales, we have to talk about the first step of that, which is kind of that handoff, right? That crucial point when, sale is moving to post-sale. What does that transition phase really look like? What are the key critical elements that you really need to nail in that, critical milestone step? Maybe things that you measure, etc. And maybe I'll turn it over to Adam first to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the kickoff is essential, right? This is actually where churn will begin, is right when things kick off, and that handoff from the sales team to the customer success team. So the way I look about it, I really think of 3 key things that you have to nail at this point is the expectations that are set in the sales process, the introduction to the customer success or onboarding specialist, as well as to the key stakeholders at the customer's place, and then also the ongoing communication, and then obviously with the delivery and execution from the customer success perspective. So really what I think is essential is that you have that on the AE side, that they are very familiar, well-trained, and can speak to what the onboarding process is going to look like, that they are excited about it, they believe it, and they really lean into it, versus maybe they're trying to skirt around it or try to skip over the steps and set you up for failure. So the key thing is on those expectations. And then what I've really found success, key part of success is ensuring that there's, as much as possible, a warm handoff to the executive buyer, the champion, the stakeholders, and ensuring that we can start off that relationship early on the right foot. Because as time goes by from the time of signing of the deal, it only gets harder to build those relationships. It only gets harder to track down those key players. And so if we could start off the relationship, invest more time early and upfront, there's going to be far greater success. And then also the ongoing key communication and making sure the customers understand, what the impacts will be by maybe not delivering something or failing to complete on certain deadlines. And then obviously we have to execute and deliver on those expectations and commitments.
Yeah. One of the things that you said there, I'd love to double click on before I move to Alex and hear his thoughts. And this is something, hey, I've been guilty of it. I think anyone in that post-sale journey has had this experience of, we go to the kickoff now, and that exec sponsor, that check signer, the person who a year from now is going to decide, do I want to sign this order form again? They're not on that kickoff call, right? They're like, oh, well, now I'm giving this to this team. I don't know. Has this happened to you? Have you thought about avoiding this at a more systemic company level? Just would love any insights there.
Yeah, I would love to say that never happens, right?
Yeah.
But anyone that's had some time in customer success knows that's not the case. It really, for one, lies on the AE setting the expectation that their presence is needed and should be there. That first and foremost needs to be there. What I've typically seen and done is obviously we include them in any recaps and the communication, but then also a formal reach out to them individually. And if by this second or third engagement we haven't had their attendance, we'll actually re-pull in the AE and ask them to reach out and try to get them re-engaged, just to really, if the executive buyer is not going to get engaged right early on, the likelihood that they're later going to jump in and get involved is going to decrease over time. And so you really got to stress making it a priority and really back at, they've signed the check, they're investing in it, and so they need to make sure it's successful.
Love it. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah,
all really good, tangible things, and trying to think about how I could pragmatize that eventually. So that's awesome. Alex, would love to kick it over to you.
Yeah, I just wanted to add on the comment Adam made. One of the ways that we keep our executive buyers engaged is actually incorporate them into the launch. So we have them participate by sending out the objectives of the program for a video tool, maybe a little bit easier, asynchronously to their end users of why they're doing this program. And so as part of our kickoff, we have to have them there because they have a role in the kickoff, and we anchor that in what makes a successful program. So if they're not participating, they don't have to join the meetings, they don't have to come to the calls, but if they're not participating in what we define as a success criteria, we push back on that and say, because you're not coming, we're already starting behind the 8 ball. And so they're required as part of the program kickoff to build a video for their team explaining why we're doing this and why this is important, how it ties into their strategic initiatives. And that video anchors the kickoff for the external stakeholders for us. So the first time they're meeting our team, we're this is what your executive has to say and why we're doing this and why you're here for the training. So it keeps them involved. And then asynchronously, we keep them engaged throughout the journey, over the next 12 months leading up to the renewal that you mentioned, Adam, by having them get updates into how their team is doing, what they're doing, why they're doing it, and if it falls out of line with what the expectation was for the program, so that we can rope them back in to help us realign and reorient the teams. So we found that those are a key tangible point to have a role directly assigned to them. Our sales reps are explicit in their required involvement as we complete that signature, that transaction. So that celebration doesn't actually happen. We're not great, we got it. We actually more celebrate once we get that content and they're bought in, because we know that's the foundation for success for them. And then we let them kind of do what a typical signer does and bow out a little bit from the day-to-days of that program. So we change the journey a little bit, and where we start with the sales reps, to go back to the original question, is the pre-kickoff, as they're going through that process. We use MedPEC. Lots of companies use different frameworks to capture the information we need in order to make this a successful transaction. This was a painful process to implement out the gate, but has paid in spades that reps can't move the transaction through different stages without capturing the information that CS and implementation need on the tail end to make it successful. So we anchor it in what is the use case? What is the value you expect? How are we measuring that value? And so when we come into that first kickoff call that I think everybody does commonly, we're already anchored in validating that information. You bought it for this reason. This is how we're going to measure. And then when we have our first executive review, we already have the metrics that the executive cares out the gate that we can feed back into. This is how we're doing against these metrics. This what is working, this what is not working, and this is the resources that we need. And so it creates a more rich dialogue because it's all in their language, and it kicks off long before a CSM ever gets introduced. So that handoff becomes, I don't think, any more or less seamless than most people do it, but it's anchored in that client's language. And we've managed to have very good success because then their teams are bought in, the day-to-day users when they're doing the implementation, because all that information is there for them as well.
Yeah,
Yes.
I mean, I think oh, go ahead, Adam, please.
I was going to say what I love. That was great, Alex. I really love that. And one of the things that, we do a similar framework and similar follow through on that process. But what I love about that is the efficiencies gained and where the data is being documented and that flows through really saves you time. But then it also really empowers you to do automation through, using those systems and processes and procedures to make sure it's captured at the right stages of the workflow, and then tying that back to your, executive business reviews, et cetera. That's really solid. I love that.
Yeah, I was literally just going to say the same thing. I loved, and I guess I was clarifying. So they're logging that in the CRM, right? When they're
yes.
Minute.
Okay. They can't move, like we use Salesforce, again, very
Mm-hmm.
common. Everybody uses, or a lot of people use Salesforce. You can't move it from like a stage 2 to a stage 3 without capturing certain information. And when we did this originally, it was painful, and like the CS leaders had to push back, being like, we can't take this deal on. Your rep needs to go back and fill it in. And it's kind of like the cadence of like, oh, come on, just this once. And we held firm, and now like it's just become part of our DNA 2 years later that like, if you don't have this information, like we can't make these clients successful.
Yeah, I love that. And then just one other thing I want to call out from that is, I think for me, one of the things that can get overlooked, and like, we're moving so quickly, we need to onboard all these customers, is like taking a step back in that kickoff call to say like, how will we be measuring the success of this launch 3 months from now, 6 months from now? And then of course we need to know that year from now, because are you going to renew or not? And so I love that you guys also include that. I think to me, that's actually the most critical part of the kickoff. Like anything technical, setup, timeline, milestones, I can get to that.
Yep.
But if I haven't defined with you from the start, again, validate what the AE heard pre-sale, how are we actually going to tangibly then measure it? Does this still make sense? I think that is like the number one key thing when we do these kickoff and transitions. So love that you call it out, Alex. Yeah, super insightful. Cool. So I think we nailed that first step. So moving on then, we're in the second phase. The customers kicked off. Hopefully they're adopting. And this next discussion point here is, how is there seamless collaboration then and that like ongoing steady state between like sales, customer success, our customer support, customer service teams? Are there any hurdles in that collaboration? What are the biggest things that really pop up in that like, steady state that you guys get ahead of? And maybe we'll start with Adam again for this one.
Yeah, I think this is a really key question and opportunity. What I think is really important is that there's a built out process that is really held on both sides of the fence, and that's followed through on, because the need for collaboration should be minimized if a process is well defined, well understood, well executed. You'll know where you need to collaborate, and then it will minimize undefined collaboration. But what I've found is, as there's exceptions being made, or if going outside of the normal standard processes, that's where things start to get clunky. That's where things can get you can have mishaps. You don't deliver the experience that you're expecting. You miss your deadlines. And so I found really leaning into the framework and the process established, making sure it's clear when and who needs to be involved and what's expected of each individual. I found that to be super important and critical. Also have found that it's really important from an executive level internally that it's clear and everyone's bought in on the vision and the importance of delivering and really ensuring that we keep that customer-centric focus and effort. So those are some of my initial thoughts on it.
Yeah. Alex, anything from you?
I'm a believer that like a healthy tension needs to exist between sales and CS. Like it can't be unhealthy. So we want to make sure we're defining what healthy is. The seller's goal is to continue to expand those accounts, and the CSM's goal is to continue to make sure we can maximize the value that the accounts are realizing. So if the seller sells something the client doesn't need, that's not good tension. The client's not going to be able to be successful with it. But a healthy tension is like the seller's pushing the rep, like your clients can use this. They could expand in this feature because it will anchor them in value, and it'll have this unlock for their team to do X, Y, and Z. And so finding that healthy balance between the two teams, I think it's important. So I like to have the two teams working together and collaborating, and bless you. And the way that we kind of handle and like iron out some of that friction is every account that an account executive works on, so the seller, needs to be based in a value map. We need to understand like the value that the client is doing what they're doing, why they're doing it. And then we talked about like being clear, transparent in our KPIs and our goals in the last piece. And then that value map is 80% responsibility of the seller to build out and 20% responsibility of the CS individual to contribute. And then we have what we call a mutual success plan. Now that's actually how we're going to execute. And that's the responsibility, 80% of it for the CSM to build out and 20% of it for the seller to build out. So it's actually getting to the nitty gritty, the tactical, the what we're going to do, how we're going to do it, when we're going to do it. And we don't require like a formal sign off. I think that would be kind of a barrier to some clients, but we actually share these with our clients. Like, this is what we heard from you. This is how it works. This is what we're going to do. This is when we're going to do it. And this is what we need from you in order to be able to execute against it. And that document is a living, breathing document that we attach in our CRM and we share with our clients in every single instance. And I think that makes the communication a little bit better between the two teams because they understand what each of them are working, what they're responsible for contributing. Where I'd say it starts getting a little unhealthy sometimes is like there's a pointing fingers, which happens in all of these orgs. And as long as we can orient back to like our core values, bless you, which is like customer obsession, then we come from a place of where like it doesn't matter who does the work. It's a matter that the work gets done because that needs to be the outcome for the client. So we kind of do similar to what Adam mentioned. We have that process that we use as our backbone to iron out that friction, to create both like organic and forced collaboration as they're building out their plans for these accounts. And it's important to have it, like the biggest thing is it can't be like a static document. It's one that they both need to be actively working in, managing too with the client. So that's the way we've handled those communications.
Yeah, I love that. I think I love to dig into a couple of those, the value map and that mutual success plan. Like, love those concepts. Do you mind sharing a little bit even more of like, are those both like Google Docs that you're sharing with the customers? That are those slides? Like, what's the actual like nuts and bolts of making sure that those are like collaborative documents? Value map, I'm assuming it's AE and CSM. Do they collaborate, co-build that? It lives in the CRM, and then the mutual success.
You've hit the nail on the head. We use a slide. I think everybody's built out cool slides with cool templated formats. So that's basically that. The value map is kind of like two pieces, our perspective, the customer's perspective, and then the mutual success plan is more of like a cool looking slide with like the names, the key stakeholders, what we're working on, the KPIs and how we're measuring them, and then the action items we're taking against them and when they're due by. So it's like the nuts and bolts of it. It is a slide. That slide gets shared, and then that slide gets tagged on their account record in Salesforce, so it's easily reportable, accessible within our system.
Okay, can I ask another spicy follow-up there? And I'm asking for my own personal, like,
by all means.
I haven't ever done this perfectly, so I'm trying to also learn too. So I love the idea of like why we want mutual success plans is exactly what you said. We want clearer, like, we are going to be trying to do these couple of things because we know that this will drive value. Customer, you agree, thumbs up. Is there an accountability mechanism, CSM with the customer, or just even the CSM, on your team of like, hey, for your book of customers, you said that you were going to do whatever. Let's say each customer has like 3 things. They have 5 customers. Did you do those 15 things across your book? Like, how do you think about that piece of the coin?
Yeah. So I guess there's like 2 pieces of accountability on the customer and accountability on the rep to get these done. So I'll answer the accountability on the rep. Like, every CSM is busy. And I think in the last like 6 months, they've become more busy versus less busy. I think that the approach we take is like, this is something that we need to have for a client. The client agrees that this is something they need to have to be successful. And this is just how we work with that customer. So the expectation is that like, this is one of the core things that you do with your client. It takes priority over a meeting. It takes priority over an email. And if you're saying that you don't need to have one with a client, like, tell us why. Like, what are you doing instead? What is the plan? Like, how is it that you're managing this relationship on an ongoing basis with this customer? And defend your position if you think this isn't the right approach for this client. Most people, I think all people so far, have not tried to defend their position as why they don't need one, but the option is there if you feel you could do something different and something better with the customer. So open to it. Like, if that's not the ultimate approach and they think that there's another way. Keeping a client accountable, I think we're struggling with that as well. Like, not like we don't have any accountability from the client, but I think customers these days, much like RCS folks, are just a lot busier, and there's a lot more vendors and there's a lot more scrutiny of vendors. The goal we have is just to make sure that we're giving it and breaking it up in like bite-sized chunks. I think when you're assigning them like a whole, like, hey, here's 3 big initiatives, what we need to do, how we need to get them done, the outcomes they'll have. Early on in a relationship, like just post-sale, like typically they're engaged, they bought the tool for a reason, it's like strategically aligned. But as you move further and further away from that date, keeping that like high momentum going is important. And the way that we do that is we try to just give them like little bite-sized pieces of like, we need to just get this little thing done, which will unlock the next thing, which will unlock the next thing. And I find that works well because the clients feel like they built momentums because they're getting wins over and over again versus like, oh my God, we got to do this like giant integration. Well, to do the giant integration, like if this week you could just send us like the key, you send us the key, cool, that's set up. The next thing we need to do is just go in with you and configure this. Now that's set up, as opposed to like, oh my God, that's a big project. And so that helps us keep clients accountable. Is it perfect? I think no, but I think right now, like as vendors are getting evaluated and some are falling below the line, we're also guilty of that. This gives us a way to like almost share the accountability of their success with them. And like, we didn't get these things from you, which is why the project is behind, which is why you're not seeing the success with it, which is why you're not sharing in the outcomes that we advertised or we originally told you that you're going to get when you sold. And so like, yes, we're the vendor, we're potentially losing you, but you're equally accountable to us in that journey.
I love it. One of the things that you said earlier that in past companies, we have been really good at, and it has been successful, of like success criteria, like of this partnership. And a lot of that to I think what you were saying is like, it's in the launch. Like, did you get that executive level comms that this new tool was coming? Did we do the enablement and training things that we asked, and you set us up with the right champions? And so it's like, at the end of the day, there's kind of a report card of like, we told you that you needed to do these things to be successful. So like, don't come crying to us. Well, again, it is kind of, at the end of the day, it does stop with us, but it is like a nice way to follow up and say like, hey, we haven't had this success criteria met. So anyways, I'm getting a lot of good ideas here. Even do we time bound some of these success criteria? I think that's one of the things that we are thinking about is how do we really close that time to value and not have launches kind of drag on, even though we know they're busy. So I think there is a healthy tension of trying to give the customer bite sizes and have them on this nice journey that's not overwhelming. But we know if we get them to get people on the platform, get those seats unlocked, do great training, and get, fleshed out mature use cases, like that value is going to be there. And so maybe there's a future world where it's like success criteria and it's like by date. So anyway, some things that I'm thinking about.
We break it out like the dates by tiers. Like we're typically comfortable with like our enterprise clients taking a much longer time. There's a lot more involvement. The change management around like loading a whole bunch of users is tricky. And so we work back from like their schedules. Whereas we really do focus on time to value with our smaller clients. Like if they're not getting into the platform pretty rapidly, then there's going to be a drop off like from usage from an adoption perspective. And so we've broken it out based on like 3 technically, but for intensive purposes, like 2 segments and the way that we want them to experience their onboarding with us. Because each of them are different. I think when we try to like take a one size fits all approach, our enterprise clients didn't appreciate like the quickness and they felt like it wasn't thorough. And our small clients didn't appreciate the slowness because they wanted like time to value right away. And so we have effectively 2 different launch motions that we do.
Yeah, that's a key thing I was going to mention was the customer segmentation. So that's helpful. We actually have 3. So we'll have our SMB, then our mid-market, and then our enterprise. And it really helps us to speed up that time to value and really, customize the experience in the processes. And then that really dictates where we envision that we're going to need that additional collaboration between the teams and ensure that, from our experience and our clientele, just one size doesn't fit all. And we've just found like that's far more successful.
Yeah, love that. Super great conversation. My head's already spinning about like action items from this. Would love to go back. One of the talking points for this is how we work with our customer service or support or user ops teams. Again, I think we know that they are an important backbone of providing that amazing customer experience for end users, but also those admins and exec sponsors. Maybe we'll start with you this time, Alex, and then we'll kick to Adam of like, how's the relationship there? Are those separate teams? Are the reporting like structures different? Like, would love to understand that.
Yeah. Great question. You did ask. I apologize that we glossed over it without touching deep into it. And so our support team serves as like a technical extension of our CS team, because we're relying on users being in the platform. And like a whole boatload of different like technologies, from camera technology to sound technology, we really need that frontline staff on the support side to be able to make sure that our users are activated. It's not scalable for a CSM to speak to like 100 different people about why their video camera is not working properly, or their extension or their plugin or their mic. And so we really rely on our partners in like technical support services. They do sit under the CS org. They're an extension of the team, like separate leader from the CS leader, but same organization. And they handle like the easy volume tickets like that, but also some of the technical difficult tickets that fall between the two. We created an overlay role, a technical account manager, that almost sits between the two teams and is more strategically aligned when something doesn't work. So like the ones I mentioned, easy fixes, like we have a playbook for that. Then other times you have like very interesting, unique things like, I won't get into the technical specifics, but for whatever reason, a video doesn't play, or doesn't play for somebody, or doesn't send, or doesn't track correctly, or all those good things. And then it needs some like deep dive research. And so those tickets get moved to a technical account manager who's now working one-to-one with the client. It's not like a retire as many tickets and get a good CSAT model. It's a be as thorough as possible model to support it. And so we have like the CSM almost like first line of defense. They're helping the client. As soon as the issue becomes technical, we move it over to our technical support services. Those folks take it on, troubleshoot, and if it reaches beyond like the technical capabilities, we move it to a technical account manager who works with the client one-to-one to like really dive into it. Sometimes it's a matter of like even as deep as like looking at their website code to make sure it's set up correctly, that we're pulling in like right images, logos, all those good things, and they're not causing anything to break. So really great partnership there. The communication is pretty open. Everybody's copied on the tickets when they need to be, or when it's like quick fixes. We're moving it into a CRM versus like email notification in every single one. So folks have visibility into what and who their clients is engaging with our resources, and like the type of CSAT that they're giving back. Like, are they happy with the service they received?
Love it. Adam, anything from you?
Yeah, I mean, on our end, we have 3 specialized roles. We have the solution consultant, the customer success manager, and then technical support. The solution consultant will actually get pulled in pre-sale to help, run a couple pilots, especially on our enterprise level clients, and really help them get an opportunity to utilize the tool and really make sure that we can deliver the value that they're expecting, and really like help them through that process. On the solution consultant team, we do have a solutions engineer, which will dive into any really intensive issues. But in that process, we don't pull in technical support. The customer success manager and technical support really gets pulled in after the onboarding, and typically the solution consulting team is running the onboarding, unless it's on our enterprise level. Then our CSM is getting pulled in right from the get-go. And then once onboarding is finalized, it will then go to the CSM, and then also technical support is introduced, and that's just as needed basis. And then the CSM manages the relationship from that point forward.
Yeah, I love that. So one thing that you said to Alex that I loved is like the CSAT that the support team has for tickets, like that's different than what we think about like the overall NPS or CSAT of the whole account. But then that got me thinking about health scores. And generally, when I've used health scores, I've seen, support tickets, quantity of those, CSAT around those be an input. I would love, as we transition into kind of the next topic here, which was all things technology post-sale. Maybe let's start with that one of like, do either of you, feel free to jump in, either of you, do you guys use health scores at a holistic level? How are you using it? What are the best inputs? Is it actionable for your teams? Like, I would love to hear from both of you or either of you.
We're going to both just sit and wait for somebody to go first.
I could jump in and give you my thoughts on that. So I've used health scores at a number of the software companies I've worked at, and I've seen varying success in it. I've gone down the route where it's super intensive and too broad, and then it sort of gets lost in too many data points to not be very actionable. I found for me, what's been most successful is having a health score, but having it simplified on just a couple key data points, and then also having like an at-risk process where you can really draw like an immediate red flag. Because I found that there's indicators that are like, this is an immediate like at risk in like churn is imminent versus like these are earlier indicators and this is likely over time going to lead to it. So I've taken those both approaches, and I've just found the simplicity works best for the companies I've worked at.
Before you go, Alex, would love to hear from you, Adam. You've done this at a couple of companies. I love that thought of like, ooh, these are urgent red flags. We need to get on this. Have you seen some themes of like across companies? If these things are happening, that is like a warning flag. We need to swarm that versus like, ooh, scores steadily changing and trending negative.
Yeah, for sure. Obviously, anything like significant drop in engagement, like utilization of the platforms, obviously by then it's probably too late. But also like, starting to get behind on bills or stop paying their bills, things like those type of administrative areas are pretty noticeable. But then the others that we've seen is just more like a slower shift in lack of utilization. On our end, in our analytics, we'll see what type of ROI they're getting. If they're slowly not getting the type of return that they've historically received, or what we would set as like the minimum expectation to make the ROI worth our tool. If they're not hitting that consistently over time, then that's also going to lead to a greater likelihood that they'll cancel. But, it's not like a matter of like, oh, we didn't hit, this many meetings or pipeline generation, so we're canceling today. But like consistently month over month, not hitting those, that pain gets increasingly more frustrated. And then also like support tickets, right? I've never had someone like get a support ticket, cancel, but it's like those build up. But I have seen though, is if there's no support tickets, that actually is an indicator that they may actually churn because they're not using it enough to have the. So I've actually found no support tickets is a bad thing. So you want, based upon the size of the account and number of users, you want a certain healthy level of number of support tickets. But then if you get to the higher bound consistently, then you're like, that's a red flag because now it's super painful for them. So there's some things like that you can look at.
Love that. Awesome. Thanks for sharing those details. Alex, anything from you?
So I went like the opposite direction of you, Adam, and I am a math geek and I absolutely adore math. So our health score is exceptionally complicated. It takes into factor the use case that they have, as well as like the type of customer that they are. So we technically have 6 health scores depending on where in the matrix you fall as the type of client that you are. Each of those health scores have 5 like unique elements. Like the basic one is like your relationship with the client, which is subjective by the CSM. You can pick and choose. Then we have adoption metrics, so usage, license utilization. We actually even went granular there by creating a unique metric to Vidyard, although probably not unique, called an engaged user, which is they've gone into the platform and they've actually done like a high value activity. So like looked at a dashboard, created a video, like done something like that. Then we track video creation rates. And then one that we've incorporated this year that I think is a little bit unique because we sell like a sales acceleration tool. So we need butts in seats, we need users, is actually LinkedIn like LSI data, based on how many sellers as well as employees are at the company and if that trend is going up or down. So each of those elements make up our health score. And we use that health score to build out like actually a fairly comprehensive forecast based on user health. So that's in conjunction with what our renewals team does. And like they actually yearly, from a bottoms up approach, very similarly match our forecast based on health scores. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but it is like mathematically sound. And then the way that we action those health scores is like most companies look at a health score, and if it's red, then the customer is at risk. We actually look at the different elements of the health score. And if any of the elements are red, then that customer is flagged at risk. And then we have associated playbooks. Like to visualize, the most easiest one is if like their employee count is going down and specifically focused on their sales employee count, you think like, we don't control that, that's not actionable. That's pretty much like an early indicator that we need to start positioning. If we're at a sales team, into a CS team, if we're at a support team, into a sales team. And so we need to start looking at where else we could move those licenses before it comes time to churn and comes time to like right size that contract. And so that becomes a playbook that's action for the CSM in order to begin that process. And so we have one of those for each of the 5 elements, depending on what we expect them to do. And there's a couple of playbooks in it. So I went completely the opposite direction of you, Adam, made it super complicated, but it's been working effectively because it gives us the right level of granularity and specificity in the actions we expect each CSM to take with these accounts.
Yeah. Do each of you guys mind sharing what tools you use for these health scores and the tracking like mechanism of all of that, if you're comfortable?
We're at a Tango shop, so yeah.
Yeah, we use PlanHat.
Cool. And not sponsored by any of them. Was just curious for my own understanding. Yeah, super interesting. So we talked a little bit about the technology that you, CS leadership, your CSMs are using to understand health, go do the actionable things they need to do. Would love to talk about technology now from the point of the customer. Very hot topic right now is like digital success, blending like digital touch points in with your CSMs. Like, would love to hear, how are you guys thinking about that? Are you thinking about it? Is there like segmented out? Does digital permeate? Like, we'd just love to hear that. Maybe we'll start with Alex. Looks like you have something to say. Start with you.
So we're thinking about the journey that our client takes within our platform and how they interact with the tool. We use app queues within the product to drive them to take like certain actions. So the like hypothesis is once a client's in the product, they know how to use the basic features. We continue to always, much like every SaaS company, continue to release new elements to our platform that enhances the value that a client can get from it. The discoverability is inconsistent, and especially like across the gamut of segments. Like at an enterprise client, we always talk to the champions, the stakeholders. Very seldom do we talk to the users. And in smaller companies, we talk to the users, but we have a lot less resources to do it. So like a typical, CSM in our like scaled segment has like hundreds of accounts. So again, we have to think about how we scale those approach. So we use app queues within the product to help like navigate to where we want to direct our customers when we release new features, as well as to the high value features that we've identified are like very sticky. So like video creation being one of the highest ones. If they're creating videos, it generally means that they're sticky. The second piece that we do in platform is we use Intercom, and is integrated directly with our support team. So if they run into any issues, barriers to usage, we have Intercom right there and available. And the first point of suggestion, we use Yext in order to recommend like the best article for solution. We put a lot of emphasis and have specific technical writers to have really good, actually both for OpenAI, so they could give our customers really good feedback in the product. And so we focus a lot on building a very robust knowledge base, so that we could suggest the right ones. And then when people are asking questions about how to do video in like ChatGPT, it also indexes us and brings us forward. So they have a strategy around that. And then after that, Intercom used to speak to an agent directly, giving them access to somebody to solve like an immediate issue, like my video is not creating, or I'm not posting, or it's not cutting or stitching, or whatever it is. So they could get those quick things that would be like, would make them a deterrent from reusing the platform or coming back, answered easily. And then on the tail end of it, we use a number of tools to reach out to our inactive users. I might butcher the names. I think it's Knock is one of them that we use to communicate with users and like try to pull them back. Like, you signed up, you've got this license, you haven't come back. Here's what Johnny on your team is doing. You also need to come back, because if you're going to be as successful as Johnny, who's created 12 videos in the last day, you need to log back into the platform. And so we're thinking about like those strategies, how to scale both getting our users engaged and staying in the platform, but as well as drawing our users back into the platform if for whatever reason they've had like a not positive experience and abandoned it. And then the last thing that we've started doing, and we'll see the effectiveness of it early days, is we're actually sending our clients like an Alice gift card saying like, hey, if you make a video sending us a video telling us why you're enjoying using video and how the product works, here's a coffee on us. And that's doing a couple of things for us. It's giving the CS team an opportunity to say like social proof, like your teammates are sending us videos saying that they're loving this. Here's some social proof that this works. And it's allowing our sellers to go back to their leadership and say like, the sales team is killing it. Here's like 5 testimonials we've collected. Should we not be in another piece of the business? And so that's our tech stack that we're using. And you specifically said around like external customer facing touch points. So I only focused on those without any internal ones.
Yeah, no, I mean, and that was already an impressive stack, I will say. I think the one that you said towards the end, I think you said it was called Knock. So just from my understanding, it's automatically able to see, hey, you are supposed to have 500 active licenses. These 100 people haven't used by whatever like time period you said. It'll email those like end users on your behalf, or how does that work? I'm super curious.
So we used to use Marketo, and the reason we moved away from it, it was like always a marketing heavy lift to get in contact with like a segment of users. And so now we've mirrored our usage data in Knock with like our outbound communication. So if a user is taking certain activities and actions, we could create a journey around getting in touch and communicating with them with like a specific outcome in mind. Before, we would almost like, okay, we know these users, we filtered in the back end, we use Looker, Google technology, and like these users are doing this certain action. here, marketing team, here's our list. Can you please email all these users telling them to do this? And generally our turnaround time on that was like 7 days, which like is not great. And it's not really like actionable, nor is it like actionable in a proactive manner. It was always like, we see this trend, here's this data, can you do this for us? And so this allowed us to like basically cut that middle person out. And now it's in the platform, they see the data, we can create campaigns around like how the usage is going and outreach to those users. And so when we're seeing like abandonment and we need follow-up, we can use that tool to get in touch.
Cool. Love that. Adam, over to you. Digital versus not and all of that.
Yeah, interesting enough, we're actually mid-flight of rolling out our digital-led efforts, and we're shooting for January 31st completion. So we're actually using app queues and intercom, just as Alex mentioned, but additionally, we're utilizing PlanHat so that we can see utilization and then run playbooks and strategic call to actions for our team, and also messaging to our customers. We're also midway rolling out our community, which is a platform for end users to collaborate within themselves, ask questions, build relationships with other end users, and really try to build that community level feeling, so people want to be stickier with our product and with other end users. We do utilize Postal for like delivering similar like gift cards and things of that nature. We also utilize Heap to see product specific adoption. And so we know like product feature specific adoption. So if we know there's certain key features that are high value add, like our video sales floor, we can know like, all right, this customer has never used it or only used it at this level. And we recognize like where there's opportunity for improvement, and that can drive a strategic call to action or strategic messaging to our customers. And then we're also mid-flight with utilizing a tool called Tango, which I'm not sure if you've used it. It's not ToeTango, which is the platform, but Tango. And that is actually basically like a click through to like, so a customer can kind of like engage with like how to learn how to do something if there's a question or a workflow. So like clicks, highlights a box on it, gives some text. And so like, it's kind of a similar kind of an app queues, but can be something that we don't have to wait on our product team to develop and implement. It kind of gives us, quick action usability for our customers. And then we do obviously use Slack. Currently, we only do that for customer facing engagements only on our enterprise level. And that's just kind of like an additional feature that we provided because, it opens a door on a can of worms if we open that up to everybody. But so.
Yeah. I love that. Well, that was all the questions that we had. And just again, really blown away by the thoughts and all of the different strategies and techniques that you guys, really walked me through. I think for me, just really thinking about how do we nail that handoff at that beginning, make sure we're defining like what does success look like, engaging our sponsors. I think that was like the clear highlights from that section. When we think about that, like middle adoption piece, right? Make sure that there's like clear roles and responsibilities with the AEs and us. And then also how do we really make sure that we understand what does bad support metrics look like and good support metrics. And again, there's nuance there of like not too high, not too low. That was a great takeaway. And then, just love on the technology piece, like technology really can be our best friends. At OpenAI, we want ChatGPT to be everyone's best friend. So, little shout out there. But those were kind of the main takeaways for me. Would love to turn it to each of you and, maybe starting with you, Alex, what was maybe your main takeaway from the session?
Yeah. I really enjoyed learning from Adam, some of the things that his teams are doing. They're like very different than mine, but similar in so many ways. And so I appreciated learning like the simplicity of the health score and starting easy. And I think the barrier to create something complex often prevents people from doing it. And so start small, go like make it work and then iterate. I think that's like a good starting point if we're kind of, going from that direction. It's very easy to get something complex and turn it into like a massive project. And hopefully it's worthwhile at the end, but start small, take away from like that conversation.
Yeah. And funny enough, that was actually similar to mine is that because I haven't seen the more intensive and be successful. Now that Alex says that he's done it so successfully, now I'm kind of feel like that's a challenge, and now I want to like figure that out. So
Yeah.
I'll probably hit you up outside of this.
Include
Alex,
me.
to,
I want to be. I want to be in that.
I now that I know, and I okay, Alex has done it, and I guess maybe it's you said you're like a math nerd or whatever. I don't know, but
I do love math.
yeah, now that I know somebody that has done a little bit more intensive version, I'm really intrigued by that, and I feel like a takeaway for me is a challenge. Like, okay, I feel confident with our V1, V2 of it, and I like, how do I push it further, and can I see those gaps and opportunities to really take it to the next level? So I'm pretty excited about that.
Yeah, I think the most intriguing thing too on that piece of like having that score so detailed is not that it's actionable, but that you're using it to forecast, right? Of like, is that forecasting accurately like renewal and expansion? I think that's like the key we all really want to unlock. So I think it's awesome that, you've gotten to that spot. And so yeah, a lot to learn from that experience that you have there. Well, thank you everyone for joining. We're going to be wrapping up here. Hope each of you got some tangible techniques and strategies from the conversation from our wonderful panelists. And we hope that you have a wonderful time at the next session. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.